This is the World Satsanga on the 26th of November 2016 in conjunction with Kevin Moore and the Moore Show. And welcome to everybody this month. And just like to say that it's always a delight to be able to broadcast this information. And we've got lots and lots of questions this time. So, and some of them are very deep reaching, as they are normally, but also looking at some form of collaboration, if you want to call it that, with the work of other people as well. So we'll go with that as we get there. I've just come back from China, from a workshop in Beijing, which is a wonderful workshop, and there was lots of support from the students there. And so as I arrived yesterday, this is a little bit of a jet-lagged version, so to speak, but we'll see how we go. There's lots and lots to do. I've looked at the agenda, and basically we've got to look at explaining what astral entities are. Then we've got the questions from a couple of, or perhaps even three people who've sent questions in from last October's Satsanga. So this is just for this one, and there's actually quite a lot of questions this time, so we'll see how we go. And then I want to look at creating a psychic shield. So I think it's looking like it's going to be more than an hour in this instance, but we'll see. Again, we'll see how we go. So in lieu of the first part then, which is to do with what are astral entities, I'll explain that basically astral entities are created in two ways. The first way is that an entity can be created by one of us or another incarnate entity from a different part of the physical universe, because we're not limited to incarnating in this particular body, and they can be created by the desire to create them for various different reasons. One can be to, if you like, act in an adversarial way towards another person, which is the usual way they're created, and in this instance they're created by mistake, or I should say unintentionally created through desires to, shall I say, do harm, or to create frustration with another person, so to speak, if that person has annoyed the person creating them. So in essence, astral entities in that instance are created by stray thoughts. The second part is that they are created through natural evolution, and the natural evolution is such that if energies are sort of grouped together for long enough, eventually they will go through the sort of rudimentary stages of gaining levels of intelligence. And clearly, we were given sentience instantaneously through source, but when energy goes through a process, it can go through a number of different processes, from gaining rudimentary intelligence to self-awareness to consciousness, and of course sentience at the end. But in general, astral entities that are created through like an evolutionary process associated with the energies simply get to a level of rudimentary intelligence, and they, like those entities that are created by people by stray thoughts or by undesirable thoughts, they aren't able to metabolize their own energy, and so they seek a host to metabolize their own energy and therefore perpetuate their existence. So even though they may evolve into having some level of rudimentary intelligence, they realize that at some point they can't grow, and so they have to create a method of gaining additional energies to allow them to grow. And this means that they seek people like ourselves who desire to be in contact with entities, and so they're easily able to latch on to the energies associated with a potential host who's shall I say, desperate to communicate with other entities, or they look for weak people who are naturally open anyway, whose auras are thin and who are largely unprotected. And so they latch onto those people and take energy, and sometimes they form a symbiotic relationships where they may well give that person some sort of say low levels of power, such as coercion over people, or feelings of self-confidence, or simply charisma, so that people would, if you like, take notice of these people, follow them, take their advice, and take orders from them, so to speak. So, in essence, these entities, when they attach themselves to us and they create a symbiotic relationship as payment for the energy, they will give that person some level of power over others. Okay, so astral entities are basically either created by thoughts, by people who create them intentionally or unintentionally, but nevertheless that they create them, or they're created as a result of natural evolution of energies that are clumped together. Now, astral entities live in the higher frequencies associated with the what we would call the gross physical. So they exist in the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th frequencies. So they're not quite gross physical. They're more spiritual physical, which is a mixture of gross physical energies, i.e. low frequency energies, and the sort of higher energies which are not so gross physical but can be classified as energetic anyway, and so they exist in those areas. Now, some people will think, well, we've been told there's different levels of astral, and there are in essence. I mean, those levels can be classified as being, for instance, the 4th frequency can be classified as the lower astral, the 5th frequency can be classified as the upper lower astral, the 6th frequency can be classified as the lower upper astral, and the 7th frequency can be classified as the upper astral. And so the entities exist in those areas. Now, the lower the frequency that they exist in, the more, shall I say, of a problem they can be to us. The higher the frequencies that they exist in, they're more benevolent, and so they don't tend to get involved with us in an adversarial sort of way, or work with us in an adversarial sort of way. So astral entities exist in those 4 levels. Various different individuals, if they take drugs to create the transcendental meditative state, will find themselves in any of those areas. If they find themselves in the lower frequencies, then they will get what's called a bad trip, because the entities in the lower frequencies tend to look and search into our memories for things that we are frightened of. And when they look at things that we're frightened of, they create an image based upon those images, and therefore we don't look for them. The higher up the frequencies these entities are, they're more invisible to us, and so they don't need to create such bizarre, or shall we say demonic types of imagery. And so an individual who takes drugs to achieve transcendental state that goes into the higher frequencies will see a more benevolent and benign landscape in terms of the astral entities there. So the bad trips are usually around the 4th and 5th level, and the good trips are around the 6th and 7th level of frequency associated with the spiritual physical. Okay, I mean, I can go into quite a lot of detail in terms of what astral entities are, but that's in effect what they are. They are low intelligent energies that are created by ourselves, by stray thoughts, or created through the natural evolution of energies that have been together a long time. Okay, now there's an awful lot of questions here. I'm going to start with a couple first, and then work on to one that deals with comparing the work of another spiritual individual, a chap called Tom Campbell, who's collaborating with me in some questions. We've worked out some questions between us to try and work out the difference between our own work and of course Kevin. And Tom's been interviewed by Kevin on YouTube. And at some point in the future, we're going to have a 3-way interview between Kevin, Tom, and myself to go through the areas of consistency between us and what one sees and uses as a descriptor for the universe or multiverse versus another. So we'll work on that. But first of all, I'll go through these questions. First question is Source Entity 4. This is in the Beyond the Source book 1. Says energy is the basis for everything that is in existence. Okay, so we have 3 questions. First one: is energy everywhere in all universes and also in the voids? Is there any place where energy does not exist? The simple answer to that is no. Energy is everywhere. It's in every universe. It's in every dimension, subdimension, frequency, and going above that is in the zones and the continuums and the other levels of structure associated with not only the source entities, but also the origin. So it's everywhere. Various different types of energy, of course, and sentience that we are uses energy to create as well and experience different environments. Next question is, where does energy come from or originate? Is it in constant creation, or has it always existed? Does it ever disappear? Energy, in my understanding, has always existed because it's part of the origin, and therefore the origin being all forms of energy, even those parts of itself that it doesn't quite understand now, are also energy with the capability of supporting sentience. Does it ever disappear? It may disappear in terms of our own understanding from one particular state to another state. So energy can move from one frequency to another frequency. It can move from one subdimension to another subdimension, and it can move from one dimension to another dimension, etc., etc. So it can go anywhere, but from the observer it would disappear. But in actuality, it doesn't disappear; it just changes state, and therefore that's consistent with the understanding with the origin. So energy comes from the origin. It's part of the origin. It's infinitesimally large, to the point where even of course the origin doesn't understand itself either. So although it knows a mere fraction of 1% of itself, and is working on that right now, which is why we're in existence, the remaining part of it is still unmapped and will take infinity to map, from my understanding. Next question is, since the origin coalesced from existing energies, where do they come from and how do they come into existence? I actually can't answer that question. From my understanding, is they always existed. There was no creation of energies. It's just energies that were in stasis, or energies that were just there. Now, to answer that question further would require another book potentially, and there is a book in the pipeline. I've not started it yet, but there's definitely one that's going to be written at some point in the future, certainly within the next 10 years. And that's a book that's going to be called Beyond the Origin, which isn't actually going beyond the origin, but it's going beyond the previous questions that are in the Origin Speaks book. And so these sort of questions will be answered, or should I say asked and answered then. So my understanding is that the energies that are the origin have always existed, and have always been in existence. And to have a start and a finish is purely a human thought process, based upon a linear function of time. Okay, so I don't think that really answers that question, but it's something we can use as a basis for questions in the next book. The next question says, on page 141 of Beyond the Source 1, again, Source Entity 4 says, I have been told by your Source Entity, this is our Source Entity 1, that there are many species that you have not catalogued yet. For some of them exist as semi-physical entities. And can I elaborate on semi-physical entities? Can we detect them, and how do they change states? There's a bit more to this. There's how do they reproduce? Do they eat and eliminate like all animal life? Are they aware of us? What is their purpose? And why did our source entity introduce them into the discussion? There are semi-physical entities on the Earth, and by semi-physical, that's from a human perspective, the physical being the first three frequencies. So semi-physical entities would be entities who are incarnate, who exist in frequencies 4 through to 12. 12 being a level of incarnation which is almost energetic, but therefore is difficult for us to imagine as being incarnation, but it is. We can't detect them as such yet with machinery or our physical eyes, but we could detect them through, should I say, more dedicated methods of meditation and communication. They don't specifically change states as such, although they can evolve the same as we do, and they can work on the evolution of their physical form. So they can evolve through the frequencies, or allow the evolution of their vehicles, their physical form or semi-physical form, through the frequencies, so that they incarnate in a higher frequency condition at some point in the linear future, so to speak. Reproduction-wise, there's a plethora of reproduction from the hermaphroditic to the simple cloning of the vehicles, to the reproduction of the vehicles through simply copying the energies associated with them and creating a fully formed, mature vehicle. The higher frequencies tend to rely less on what we would call food. They take more energy through the chakras, and so therefore they don't need to have the ability to ingest or drink liquids and then void them, whichever way they do, because they're not particularly classified as animal life. They are a more higher form of incarnated vehicle, and therefore they use the energetics in preference to the physical consumption of fuel. Are they aware of us? Yes, of course. Any entity that's a higher frequency is aware of the entities that are lower frequency, although they're not aware of the entities in the frequencies above them. So they will be aware of entities that are in the lower frequencies, because they will be walking around us or through us, as the case may be. But they won't be interacting with us, although some do. And some have been reported as being entities from different physical bodies that we call planets, and therefore aliens. But my understanding is that they're just a different, higher frequency incarnate vehicle that we use. Their purpose is the same as us, to experience, learn, and evolve. But they do that in a different frequential state, and therefore have a different level of, shall we say, integration with the physical universe than we do. We have a lower frequency integration, they have a higher frequency integration with it. And why did our source entity introduce them into the discussion? Simply to advise us that just because we don't see it, hear it, smell it, taste it, or touch it, doesn't mean it's not there. We know from the use of electron microscopes and from some of the space-based telescopes that there are things that we can't see. And so it makes sense to recognise that if we can't see it, it doesn't mean it's not there. That's the same with atoms and quarks, etc. We can't see them, but we know they're there because eventually we can detect them. But right now we don't have the capacity to detect them, but we may well do in the future. And so it's worthwhile noting that as our technology increases, the ability to work with higher frequencies increases, we'll start to detect and observe some of these higher frequency incarnate beings as well. So it's basically a way of saying, we couldn't work with radio waves 150 years ago, and now we can. We can't see radio waves, but we know they're there. And say 150 years ago, we would have written it off as being witchcraft, or close on to it. But now it's an everyday function of what we are. And so, in essence, we just need to expand our consciousness using that thought process to think that, well, if whatever we can't see doesn't necessarily mean it's not there. It just means we can't detect it yet. And that's the same with these other entities that exist on higher frequencies within the physical universe. Okay. Next question is relevant to one of my readers reading the Andar logs, and thank you very much for reading that book. And the question is, other than projecting, this is to do with the true energetic self, and it says that other than projecting up to 30% of itself into aspects, in brackets, souls, what does the true energetic self do with the other 70%? Is the CES living a life, in brackets, as we would perceive it, of its own at some other level, or is it just a blob of energy creating and assimilating aspects? The true energetic self, I'm asking the question now because that's a good question. That is, in fact, a good question. And my understanding, based upon the information I've just gained, which is new information, I've not questioned what the function of the true energetic self is in terms of its own role in terms of evolution, because my understanding is based upon my current level of detail accrued from the source and from origin, is that the true energetic self simply experiences, learns and evolves through the projection of smaller aspects of itself into different environments. And so the question is, what does the other 70% of the test do? Test meaning true energetic self, is that it actually assimilates that information. It works with it. It understands the different levels of interface with the environment that the true energetic selves, so that the aspects are part of, or souls are part of, and the interaction with other souls based upon the limitations surrounding the different environments that these different aspects or souls are projected into. So it spends most of its time analysing that information, but also clearly that's just a small part of it. And so the other work is, in effect, is working with the higher frequencies associated with its evolutionary level within the multiverse. So what it does is assimilate the information from the aspects that it has projected, including all the various different event streams and event spaces that have been created by these aspects, looking at the different possibilities, the possibility of possibilities, and the possibility of possible possibilities, including probabilities and other forms of inevitability as well. So there's lots of different things it looks at there, but it also looks at dissecting the experiences that they've had, and that's what we call a life plan. But it looks at its own work within the location that it's in, and it can move within 3 full dimensions of where it is from an evolutionary perspective. So it has its own plans basically. That again is going to be very likely in the book that's going to be called the Beyond the Origin. So I can work on that then. So thanks for that question. Limited in terms of its answer, but in essence, it's going to give you an idea that a lot of its time is spent working with the information accrued or assimilated from the aspects. Next question is, what is our source sensitive trying to achieve by creating true energetic selves, and by extension aspects and shards? Acquiring evolutionary content is a bit vague. It is vague, but evolutionary content is a result of experiencing, learning and evolving. And if you think of it in terms of a very linear function, the more helpers you've got, the more chance you've got of understanding yourself in a faster way, and in a deeper way as well. So the function of the true energetic self, and therefore the aspects and shards, is to experience, learn and therefore evolve as a result of deepening the understanding of self and the experience of self and the experience of working with different environments and different events and different individuals, different other individual aspects and shards within the various different frequential environments or universes, and also the different levels of interactions are available through the creation of different realities, so to speak. So it works on all of this. It's to do with a complete holographic understanding of who and what it is, on the microscopic aspect of what it is. That may not be a good enough answer actually, but it gives you a thought process that it's looking at the absolute minute detail and working on it in that respect, and therefore it needs smaller entities to do it, because, as you know, we can't see what an electron microscope can see, and so if we operate in the same size as the bugs or virus or bacteria that can be seen on an electron microscope, we can work in a more complete way than what we can do in this macroverse, if you want to call it that, in terms of the difference between a microverse that bacteria and viruses may work on, versus what we are in this particular size of universe right now. So make something small in the nano size, it'll experience that nanoverse in a much better way than somebody can experience a macroverse or a microverse. And what is the evolutionary content, and what does it need to be acquired? Is it simply as our source entity want to expand and know itself? Evolutionary content is a if you like, a progressive state of understanding. It's the culmination of understanding the interface with something and some individuals from many different angles. It's a bit like understanding how to eat steak in a rare, super rare, medium, or well done state, and then you could have either chips with it, or beans, or rice, or wine, or different types of wine. It's experiencing the same things in multiple different ways to gain a full understanding of what that experience is. And again, that's in a holographic way. And in doing that, it expands its knowledge. It gains evolution and something beyond evolution, which I'm just told to call progression, and it moves forwards from that, and its understanding of self increases, and as a result, so does the origin. So that's where we're coming from. So evolution is a full understanding from every perceivable angle and different variant or parallel condition of something, or some interaction with other entities. I hope that answered that question, because that's quite a good answer actually. Because I think evolution is classified from a Darwinian perspective as simply a survival of the fittest, or the strongest, or the cleverest, whereas in actuality it's experiential, and experiential from a parallel condition, a parallel of a parallel of a parallel of a parallel condition, etc. If it can be experienced, and it can be experienced in different ways, it should be experienced in all those different ways. Simple as that. Simple as that. Although it clearly means it's a much deeper response. Okay. Next series of questions are based upon my understanding of some of the thought processes presented by Tom Campbell with his My Big Toe books. The My Big Toe, or MBT, or the Theory of Everything, is based upon science and logic-based assumptions of what the multiverse or universe is, and how and what consciousness is, and what is evolution. And so Ulla, who's asked these questions, will integrate, I feel, should integrate the summary of the My Big Toe theory as part of the transcription. Now, I shan't go through all of that because it's clearly quite a lot of information, so it does go into some detail. But I will go through the questions in relevance to it, and answer them based upon my own understanding of the information I gain, and how it relates to Tom's information. Again, the detail of the questions will also be available in the transcript as well. So if you listen to the audio as you're doing right now, you should also refer to the transcript. Okay, so I'll go through these as quickly and as concisely as possible. So the first one is: do we exist in a virtual reality game board of sorts? Is the multiversal structure that our source created and we maintain that kind of board game? Please elaborate on what I've told us in the past. And the sort of sub-questions that are: every part of what is in existence is part of the source or God, whether it is one particular parallel existence or another. Yeah, in essence, things can be split into event streams, event spaces, and realities. And some of this information is coming out on the book that I'm working now on, which is called The Curators. But we create a function based upon how we interact with an environment and the individuals who are also within that environment, and that creates our understanding of what that function is, in terms of our own perceptions. And so we create a reality, and that reality can be localized, it can be individualized, localized, globalized, and then universalized as well. And so we create a reality based upon our own understanding of what we're interfacing with, and how we're working with it. And so, is it a game board? Well, we create what we want to experience, and then we experience it in the way we wanted to experience it, or maybe we want to experience it a different way. So you could think of it in terms of a series of potential interactions that we do have, could have had, should have had, may have had, will have had, in the various different parallel versions of those, in terms of the probabilities and eventualities, etc., that go with those. And so everything is in existence is a function of this experience, and it exists for as long as we want it to exist, and ultimately it will dissolve anyway when we move through the end, when we all collectively move to the end of the this particular evolutionary cycle. So in that instance, the reality is a temporary condition. If you want to call it virtual, you can do. If you want to call the experience a game, you can do, because it is simply a transient condition that we create to exist within, to experience within. The next one is in the parallel condition we experience everything concurrently. Everything is an illusion because everything is only a parallel condition to something else. So it is illusion, but it isn't illusion. It's experience. If everything is experienced concurrently, then it's experience. It is a different event stream, a different event space, a different reality, a different way of experiencing. So it's not particularly illusion because it's created. So there isn't such a thing as illusion, really. There's only a different level of creation. That creation can be dissolved. Now, if you want to say that creation that's dissolved was an illusion because it no longer exists, then that's up to the individual. But my understanding is that illusion is something where we think it doesn't exist, but we're creating it itself. Well, we actually create everything, and so you could consider that everything is illusion if you really wanted to, but in essence, I would like to say it's reality. It's a reality based upon event spaces, event streams, and it's based upon the mainstream event spaces and event streams and mainstream realities as well, mainstream probabilities, etc. And so what we experience is based upon that. And in essence, again, it's all temporary anyway, because when we go through when we've been finished this particular evolutionary cycle, when everybody's test has evolved up to the point where it's got to the end of the frequencies associated with the multiverse, then it all changes anyway. We do it potentially again, or in a different way, depending upon where the source entity locates itself within the structure of the origin. Okay. 2. Is the physical universe also a digital simulation of ones and zeros? No. I would suggest it's more analog. I think digital is too black and white, because if you think about the different event spaces that we create and realities that we create and event streams that we create, it can't be a physical a simulation. It's got to be a function of our interaction with a static structure, and therefore the decisions that we make create other versions of that static structure that we call event spaces. So the continuation of this is our physical form a digital simulation like the Avatar, virtual game piece that Tom Campbell's My Big Toe Theory of Everything describes, devoid of any matter or even anew particles. Please elaborate on what I've told us in the past. Everything in the material world is an illusion because we are creating it to understand it. I wouldn't use the word illusion. I prefer to use the word reality, because we are working with it and it is real to us. So the difference between illusion is something where we don't have control of it, where we don't work with it. It is not something we are experiencing. Whereas a reality is something we are experiencing. So if we're creating something to understand it, then it's a reality, not an illusion. So this answers the second bit. But even if it is illusion, we have created it. We live in it. We exist. We incarnate into a created environment and we create it. So yeah, that sort of backs up what I've just said. Illusion, delusion is something to do with something which is thought to exist but doesn't. What we do is exist. We create. We exist within that creation. We interface with that creation, we work with the creation, we modify the creation, we observe the modification of the creation, and we experience, learn and evolve from that. So I think illusion is probably the wrong words here. I think reality is the better way of saying it. I'm told I shouldn't think, I should tell you. So that's where illusion is something we don't experience. Reality is what we're experiencing. So reality is what we're experiencing. We're not experiencing illusion, even though we've created it. So if we created it, it's a reality. Okay, so the third set of questions here is the origin and other sources by default similar to the super duper quantum computer, which is trying to expand and evolve through us and other entities as pieces of its sentience, consciousness? I'm asking this question because I use some computer terms such as SE1 used a program to make billions of true energetic cells in a more efficient manner, which resulted in the different energetic genres of for instance, animals, plants, minerals, ourselves, the genre of entity in between what we are and the animals that we know are incarnating right now as the backfill people. If you want to call the origin a super duper quantum computer, you can do. I would say it's not a computer because it's able to think, analyse, experience, learn and evolve. It uses intention and desire and thought to create the action. So it's not a computer as such because it is sentient. A computer isn't sentient yet. We don't have the capacity to make a computer which is intelligent. It follows a series of routines and programs and subroutines and subprograms, and there's a level of what we call learning based upon the desirability of interaction with that particular software. And so the idea of learning is based upon us interfacing with the program and creating levels of continuity, and that's classified as learning. So the origin isn't a super duper computer, in my understanding. It is intelligence. It is omniscient, polyomniscient intelligence that is based upon its own growth and its own evolutionary progress and its own progress, full stop. In the first part of this bit here, the SE1 used a program. It's basically a process rather than a program. I think program sometimes is the wrong way to use it, wrong way to explain it, and that's my fault. It's a process that it created that could work on its own. Now, if you want to call that process that's autonomous a program, you can do. It's something that allows the source entity to create something that works, to reproduce something that it doesn't have to keep its eye on all the time. It's a bit like us creating something or a routine or something that we do automatically, that we don't have to concentrate on. So if you want to call that a program, you can do. But my understanding is it's just a process that it created that was robust and repeatable. The next part of it is the true energetic self gets additional processing power from aspects that remain whole within the main body of the true energetic self. Yeah, that's because the sentience remains within the TESS. When a true energetic self or TESS projects an aspect of itself into an environment such as a physical universe, it gives away some of its sentience. So if that sentience is retained within the main body of the TESS, and that sentient energy is within there, then it creates that additional processing power for it. And so that's additional sentience, creativity, intelligence, consciousness, self-awareness. All those things all add up to sentience. It adds to its sentience. Okay. The next bit is in the rest period after death, the aspects start to recognise more and more continuity errors until the environment and the bodies of these people start to dissolve. And that's right. I mean, basically, it's looking at how the aspect related to the environment that it was in, the reality, as it were. And so, potentially, an environment that it creates post-physical demise through in essence, the level of immersion it has in that particular incarnation. The deeper the immersion, the more we relate to ourselves as the physical form, because the ego takes over, the more that we would create an environment based upon our earthly existence, our incarnation, when the physical body demises. And it's only when we start to see the continuity errors in that reproduction, because we've created it locally, and we haven't got the backup of others creating or adding towards that event space or that event stream or that reality, that there starts to be continuity errors, and so we start to see the true environment of where we are and what we are, and so the reality that we've created therefore starts to dissolve, and so we start to see other aspects for what they are: energy, sentient energy, and the links between those aspects and the true energetic selves that they are associated with, and the environment that the TES exists within. Okay. And the next part is when we ascend out of the physical universe from frequency 12 to frequency 13, we move into a simulacrum universe, which is a copy or duplicate of the existing physical universe. Yes, it is, but in essence, it's almost like it's an environment that we can work with that is similar to how we see the physical universe when we're on the 12th frequency, which is pretty full, not the empty space we see now with the odd dot of a galaxy. And it gives us that sort of level, but everything's in one frequency band, not in 12 separate frequency bands. And so it's almost like allowing the lowest condition that we can work with being the 13th frequency, and not and therefore the second self-contained universe, and not the physical universe. So it's sort of almost a reproduction of the main features of the physical universe, but in a higher frequency, in a frequential level where everything is contained in one level, rather than the need to have 12 different levels to contain it. And so it allows a higher level of functionality whilst providing a similar level of environments that the physical universe does. And there's a similar jump between 13 and 14. And then 15 we don't need, it's just purely energetic. I mean, 13 and 14 is pretty much energetic, but it is the borderline between resistance, as it were, with the environment, and no resistance. There's resistance within the physical universe. There's significantly less resistance in level 13, and there's even significantly less resistance again in level 14. We get to 15 is purely energetic, so there's no resistance other than the content that's supported there. As we go up the content in the different frequency levels, the content increases as we go up the frequencies. So it's a bit like having the megapixels on a camera. The more megapixels you've got on the coupled charge device array, that's the CCD array, that's the bit that senses everything, the more content you can have in there, in the same space. So it might be a 1 millimeter by 1 millimeter piece of silicon, but the amount of content that can be stored on a 16 megapixel array is significantly more that can be stored on a 1 megapixel array, for instance. And that's the difference between the physical universe, the 1 megapixel array, versus a 16 megapixel array, which is, for instance, the 13th frequency, which is the second universe. Okay. So I think that answers the question. The sort of the end part was, please elaborate on how you see things as compared to the my big toe model with just a computer, a player, and a virtual reality game board. Is that which we are reduced to in real terms? Do people think we live in the Matrix, shown in the movies? I'd like to gain your perspective on the true nature of the greater reality. I'm asking a question as we speak about Tom's work and what it does for us. And although the words are different, in effect what they do is they promote an expansion of thought. They make you question the environment and the way the environment is described. And although I wouldn't agree in the way the words are used, because the meaning behind the words is not particularly relevant to my understanding. If you look at it from a different perspective, what he's trying to explain in physics and engineering terms is somewhat reasonable. But you have to go beyond those words that he's using. So it's if you like, it's a thought process. What he's using is a way of encouraging people who are, shall we say, rigid in their thought process, in terms of they're looking for scientific responses and physical responses, to give them the ability to think beyond that rigidity. And the work that Tom's doing is doing that. You then go into a different state of understanding, which is mine, and then above mine there's the total amorphous, formless state, which you could argue that Eckhart Tolle works with. But in the formless state, it's very difficult to describe in human terms, and so there's very little information that comes out of that. And I think even Eckhart struggles with it as well in terms of trying to explain it in human terms, other than saying things are amorphous and formless. So use it as a potential for expansion and for removing the shackles of rigidity, rather than a way of explaining things in an absolute sense. And that's the best way to look at it. It's giving you a thought process, or giving one a thought process that allows the expansion of thought processes and the expansion of experience as a result of thought process. And that's the way to see it. The examples of answers that I've given are fairly consistent with the dialogue I've had with Tom in terms of how we've worked with each other. We had a tic-tac for about 2 or 3 weeks where we were talking about various different things and answering each other's questions and things. And so the answers I've given in this dialogue that others given are similar in quality to the dialogue I had with Tom, and therefore if it's similar in quality, it's the same. Okay, so let's have a look at the rest of the agenda, and I look at what we've got to do now is spend the last few minutes working on how to build a psychic shield. And this will be a summary rather than the actuality. The actuality is included in the Psychic Shield correspondence course, which is on my website. And so if you go into the website and look at the correspondence courses tab, you'll see Psychic Shield there. And so the depth of the course is there, which is an audio and a PDF file explaining it all. But this will give you an understanding of what that is. Now, to create a psychic shield, we need to obviously enter into a quiet state of mind. So you can also consider it as a guided meditation. And I'm going to do this quite quickly. So it's not going to be an in-depth understanding. It's going to be a functional understanding, a summarised understanding. In my courses and in the end of the in the appendix of the history of God, there's a comment there about how to open your chakras, and actually I might add that exercise to the transcription that's given to us by Ulla after the broadcasting of the audio, and so that'll give you more detail there anyway. What we have to do basically is create a condition where we are creating a laminate structure between the auric layers. And we do this by raising our level to the same frequency as the auric layers, and we do this by extending our chakras and rotating them clockwise. That pulls energy in and creates a condition where all of us, including the physical body, is temporarily risen to the frequency associated with that chakra, and in doing so we reinforce the auric layer that's associated with the chakra. So the first auric layer is associated with the first chakra, very simply. I'm not going to go through the names because it's something you can look at on the PDF file that's presented. Second auric layer is associated with the second chakra, etc., etc., up to the seventh auric layer is associated with the seventh chakra. And so if we extend each of the chakras from their points of origin, which the first chakra has its point of origin where the two legs meet the lower body, that's where the sex organs are. The second chakra is associated with a point 3 inches or 7.5 centimetres below the navel. The third one is associated with an area 3 inches or 7.5 centimetres above the navel. The fourth one is associated with the area that's in the centre of the front of the chest. The fifth one is associated with an area that's in the centre of the neck, midpoint of the neck. The sixth is at the centre of the front of the forehead, and the seventh at the top of the head. So we got the base chakra is the first, sacral is the second, soul is the third, heart is the fourth, throat is the fifth, spiritual third eye is the sixth, and the crown is the seventh. Okay. So if you visualize or use a mentally spoken word, that achieves the same thing by using your intention. To spin a chakra, so extend that chakra, just ask it to extend out to its largest extension and rotate it clockwise, you get yourself to that level. So if we were to extend and rotate the first chakra, that reinforces the first auric layer. If we then extend and rotate the second chakra, we don't worry about the back chakras, by the way, because the back chakras follow what the front chakras do. Psycho-spiritual, the front chakras are our intention and the rear chakras are our action. So whatever we do with the front chakras, the rear chakras do as well. And the second through to the sixth chakras have a front and rear aspect. So anyway, if we extend and rotate the second chakra, we augment or significantly create the second auric layer. We reinforce it, and then what we do is we flood the gap in between the outer edge of the first auric layer and the inner edge of the second auric layer to create a laminate of the first and second. If we extend and rotate our third chakra, we reinforce the third auric layer. If we then flood the gap in between the outer edge of the second chakra and the inner edge of the third chakra, we create a laminate of the first, second and third auric layers. If we do the same thing on the fourth chakra, we extend and rotate that, we reinforce the fourth auric layer. And again we can flood the gap in between the outer edge of the third auric layer and the inner edge of the fourth auric layer, and we flood it with white light, and then we therefore create a laminate between the first, second, third and fourth. And we would continue this up to the seventh, extending our chakras, rotating them, reinforcing the auric layer, flooding the gap in between the outer edge and the inner edge of that particular pair of auric layers until we get to the seventh layer. If you wish, you can go further. I always say that we should go to the 10th level because there's 10 frequencies associated with the human form. So then we simply visualise or use a mentally spoken word to create an 8th, 9th and 10th auric layer. Again, flooding the gaps in between the outer surface and the inner surface of those, the pairing auric layers, and therefore we create a laminate. So we've now got a laminate between the 1st and 10th frequencies, using the 1st to the 7th auric layers and the 3 other energies we create. Now we can create as big a laminate as you want to. You can go up to 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 if you want to, adding or visualising extra energies outside of those particular energies you've created. You can create a psychic shield as big as you want to. Okay. We then need to sort of visualise it compacting, because if you think about something that's quite solid now as an auric field, if you leave it as it is, it gets in people's ways and people will be sort of looking at you strange all the time. So it's best to compact it. So ask it to compact down and shrink down so it's a very tight laminate of the auric layers and the light in between them. And then basically you'll bring it down to the same sort of egg-shaped size as what you would have if you hadn't have created this laminate. You should then visualize the gap in between the inside surface of the first auric layer and your physical form being evacuated. So a vacuum being created in there, and that anything that's within there is ejected and goes in a one-way way, like a one-way valve, from the physical form out to the outside of the psychic shield. So you evacuate the gap in between you and your first auric layer. And when you've done that, basically all you need to do is program it, and you use your intention or your mentally spoken words to say that you want it to protect you from anything you wish, such as astral entities. You can ask it to protect you against all astral entities. You can ask it to protect you against individuals in terms of their aggressive thought processes, their coercions, their energy attacks, their needs to be adversarial with you. You can protect yourself from their energies, and so you can protect yourself from general stuff, from specific individuals and the way they work with you, and for astral entities, by simply saying, for instance, that this shield will now protect me from astral entities that are taking energy from me. This shield will protect me from astral entities that X person has sent towards me. This shield will protect me from coercion or energy draining from this person, for instance. You can use those sorts of words. The other thing you can say is that actually there's something called a Trojan horse function, where some of these people or entities who are trying to get your energy, they can find a way into your energy by using loved ones or loved animals or trusted individuals as a Trojan horse for getting their energies into you. So then you need to state that these loved ones, animals, or trusted individuals cannot be used as a Trojan horse, because these are the people or these are the animals that we let into our energies, and we let them in naturally. And if we let them in naturally, any entity or energy or method of getting to us can also enter us. So we need to sort of state basically that this is something that can't happen, and so we stop the Trojan horse effect as well. Now you can assign a lifetime to this particular shield. You can say it can last 10 years, 2 years, 2 months. You can program it. You can remove it by just reversing the process of creating it. And if you wish to create one around your house or your car or somebody else, simply visualize the shield being around them, or the house or the car or the animal, rather than yourself when you create it, and therefore you create that shield around them as well. Okay, again, this is a very popular method that was given to me by the source. A lot of people use it now, and if you concentrate properly and meditate on it properly when you create it, it is extremely robust and long. It has a long life as well. Again, you can have it for as long as you wish. If you want it for the rest of your life, it'll be there for the rest of your life. If you want it for 10 minutes, you can have it for 10 minutes. It's as flexible as that. And you can change its programming whenever you want to as well. Okay, so that's a very very basic overview of how to create a psychic shield. Again, I'll add the PDF file on how to extend and rotate the chakras, energizing yourself through the chakras, and that'll give you an understanding of what that is. Again, if you really want to go into depth and detail about the psychic shield, that's available on the website as a correspondence course. This isn't a plug for it. This is just simply stating that the detail and depth of understanding is there. Okay, everybody. Well, thank you very much for listening to this particular Satsanga. Again, it's a little bit longer than expected, although I'm really pleased at how fast I've managed to get through the questions. I was trying to be as clear and concise as possible. Again, I apologise for the slightly woolly start. So just arrived back from China yesterday, so I'm a little bit jet lagged, and so I'm working on that as well to try and get my energies back into the UK rather than Beijing. Okay, and looking forward to the next Satsanga, which will be a bit earlier because I'm actually going on a sabbatical at the middle of December and over the Christmas period, so I'll be doing the Satsanga for December slightly before the 16th. So anybody who's got any questions, they should send them in before the 10th of December, because I'm going to be doing the Satsanga beforehand and then releasing it on the 16th. God's love to you all, and many blessings, and high thoughts and good thoughts and high frequencies to you all. Again, just to remind you, this is done in conjunction with the Moore Show with Kevin Moore, and he's been doing a fantastic job in terms of putting the visuals on the YouTube versions that are on his website and his YouTube site. And so look forward to broadcasting this in December, and I'll send you all my love and peace as well.
Did you see the aliens in Crete?